I never thought I would be the person standing in the middle of my own living room, holding a half-folded laundry basket, while the man I had spent 7 years of my life with looked at me with a coldness that felt like a physical blow to the chest. He didn't scream, he didn't throw anything, he just reached over, clicked the power button on the TV to silence the evening news, and said 2 words that shattered my entire world: "Get out." Just like that, 7 years of shared bank accounts, holidays with parents, and plans for a future house were reduced to a command you'd give a stray dog. I stood there in the sudden, ringing silence of our apartment, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought I might actually collapse. But I didn't say a single word back to him. I just stared at the back of his head as he went back to scrolling on his phone, as if I had already ceased to exist. I have to ask you all right now, if the person you loved most in the world discarded you like a piece of trash without a single explanation, would you have begged for answers, or would you have done what I did and started planning your move in total silence? Tell me if you think I was cold-blooded for what happened next, or if he got exactly what was coming to him. To understand how we got to that moment, you have to understand who Mark and I were. We met in our mid-20s, both of us working entry-level jobs in the city, sharing dreams over cheap takeout and dreaming of the day we'd have a real life. Mark was charming, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and have everyone laughing within 5 minutes, and I was the grounded one, the one who handled the bills, the schedules, and the emotional heavy lifting. For years, I thought we were the perfect team. I supported him through 3 different career changes, even working double shifts at the hospital when he decided he wanted to go back to school for his MBA. I never complained because I saw it as an investment in us. When he finally landed a high-paying executive role 18 months ago, I thought we had finally made it. We moved into a luxury high-rise, started looking at engagement rings, and for the first time in my life, I felt secure. But that security was an illusion. Mark started changing almost as soon as the first big bonus check hit his account. The man who used to bring me flowers for no reason became the man who complained that the dinner I spent 2 hours cooking wasn't up to the standard of the restaurants he was now frequenting with his new coworkers. He started staying out late, claiming it was networking, and when he was home, he was perpetually distracted, his eyes glued to his phone. I tried to talk to him, to ask if we were okay, but he'd just roll his eyes and tell me I was being needy, and that I didn't understand the pressure he was under. The week leading up to the get-out moment was weirdly quiet. Mark had been distant, but in a way that felt calculated. He stopped arguing with me entirely. He stopped asking what was for dinner. He just drifted through the apartment like a ghost. I thought maybe he was just burnt out, so that night I tried to create a little bit of normalcy. I was folding laundry, the TV was on some mindless sitcom, and I asked him if he wanted to go to my sister's wedding with me the following month. That's when it happened. He didn't even look at me. He just reached out, killed the volume, and told me to leave. No, I'm sorry. No, I don't love you anymore. Just a demand for my absence. I think he expected me to cry, to scream, to demand to know if there was someone else, and honestly, every fiber of my being wanted to. But something inside me just snapped. A cold, hard clarity washed over me. I realized that if I fought him, he'd just use my emotions to justify calling me crazy to all our friends. So I did the one thing he didn't expect. I set the laundry basket down, walked into our bedroom, and slept on the far edge of the mattress in total silence. I didn't pack a bag that night. I didn't call my mom. I just waited for the sun to come up, because I knew something Mark had forgotten. I was the one whose name was on the primary lease, and I was the one who had been handling the administrative side of his life for 7 years. The next morning, Mark left for work early, probably assuming I'd be gone by the time he got back. He left his spare key on the counter like a final insult. But as soon as his car pulled out of the garage, I went to work. I wasn't going to be the one moving out, not permanently, and certainly not without a parting gift. You see, Mark's high-flying lifestyle was built on a foundation of cards that I had been holding together. I knew his passwords, I knew his schedules, and I knew exactly who he had been talking to for the last few months. While he was at his desk playing big shot executive, I called a man named Elias. Elias wasn't a lawyer or a hitman, he was a high-end estate liquidator and a private investigator I'd secretly consulted a week prior when I first suspected Mark was hiding more than just a wandering eye. Before I tell you the absolute chaos that ensued when Elias showed up at the door while Mark was home the next day, I want you to pause right here. Put yourself in my position. You've given 7 years to a man who just told you to get out. Like you're garbage. Would you have left quietly, or would you have stayed to ensure he lost everything he thought he'd gained? Drop a comment right now and tell me if you think I was being vindictive or just. By the time the next evening rolled around, I was still in the apartment. I had spent the day moving my most precious belongings to a storage unit, but I left the place looking exactly as it always did. When Mark walked through the door at 6:00 p.m., he was furious to see me sitting on the sofa. He started to open his mouth to yell, to ask why I was still there, but before he could get a word out, there was a firm knock at the door. I stood up, walked past him, and opened it. There stood Elias, accompanied by 2 very large men in uniforms and a woman holding a clipboard. Mark looked confused, then indignant. "Who the hell are these people?" he demanded. I just smiled a real, genuine smile for the first time in months, and said, "Mark, this is the team helping me settle the estate. Since you wanted me out so badly, I decided to take everything that belongs to me, which, as it turns out, is almost everything in this room." You see, Mark had been so busy being an executive that he'd forgotten I was the one who purchased the furniture, the electronics, and even the high-end espresso machine he loved so much, using the inheritance my grandmother had left me. But that wasn't the man I mentioned. The real kicker came 10 minutes later when a second man arrived. This was Mr. Henderson, the owner of the firm Mark worked for. I had called him that morning and told him I had some financial documents of Mark's that I thought he should see before Mark's upcoming audit. Documents I'd found showing Mark had been padding his expense reports to fund his flings with a certain 22-year-old intern. The look on Mark's face when his boss walked into our living room while movers were literally carrying out our sofa was the most satisfying thing I have ever witnessed. Mr. Henderson didn't say much. He just looked at Mark with pure disgust and told him not to bother coming in on Monday. Within 2 hours, Mark went from being a man who thought he could discard a human being to a man standing in an empty, echoing apartment with no job, no furniture, and a reputation that was currently in the shredder. He tried to come at me then, his face purple with rage, but the movers I'd hired were also off-duty security, and they made sure he didn't get within 5 feet of me. I walked out of that apartment with nothing but my handbag and my dignity, leaving him with the out he wanted so badly. The aftermath was messy, but beautifully so. Mark tried to sue me for theft of the furniture, but I had every single receipt digitized and ready to go. He tried to get his job back, but the evidence of his embezzlement was undeniable. He ended up moving back in with his parents in another state. Completely broke and blacklisted from the industry, he spent so much time trying to conquer. As for the intern, as soon as the money dried up, she was gone, leaving him with nothing but the silence he'd forced on me that night he turned off the TV. I moved into a smaller, sun-drenched place of my own. I realized that for 7 years, I hadn't been building a life with a partner. I'd been building a pedestal for a narcissist. Taking it down was the hardest and best thing I've ever done. Looking back, that moment he told me to get out was the greatest gift he ever gave me, because it finally allowed me to see him for exactly who he was. If there's a moral to this story, it's that you should never mistake someone's kindness for weakness. Just because I stayed quiet doesn't mean I wasn't planning my move. If you think Mark got exactly what he deserved, make sure to like this video. It really helps the channel out and lets me know you're on my side. Subscribe for more stories where the quiet person finally speaks up, and please share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have gone as far as I did to get revenge, or would you have just walked away? I'll see you all in the next story. Polish language ma convert kr